This was a video series that we put together to spotlight a selection of university faculty kind of very much in their zone. One of among their many functions at a liberal arts college at the core is teaching, is educating, is inspiring others. And we wanted to be able to capture that and share that more broadly and give a sense of who you learned from here and what that feels like.
Hey, welcome to the Higher Ed Storytelling University podcast, a show where we bring together Marcom leaders from both inside and outside higher ed to give you fresh perspectives on successful content creation and strategy in higher education. My name is John Azzoni. I'm the founder of Unveiled, a video production company working specifically with colleges and universities. Learn more about our work, including our subscription approach to storytelling at unveiled.tv. That's UNVEILD. And if you like this podcast, then you'll love the Higher Ed Storytellers Digest. It's my free weekly newsletter where we cover a lot of ground about content creation and strategy. Sign up at unveiled.tv/newsletter. All right, let's get on with the show. In today's episode, we're talking top of funnel video content, and in particular, a series from our friends at Sewanee called Inquiring Minds. If you want a great example of how to get faculty in front of the camera talking about stuff that they just naturally nerd out about, do yourself a favor, go to YouTube and search Inquiring Minds Sewanee or something like that. I don't have to tell you how to search the internet, but worth knowing those that their YouTube channel is University of the South because they're so cool and they have two names. Or check the description of this episode because we'll have links. But we are joined by the one and only Bobby Silk, student success communications and content strategist at Sewanee, and he was the producer of this series, and he's going to tell you all about why they pursued this series, how they got faculty to enthusiastically participate, how they're distributing it, and small schools will appreciate this, how they did it with a very slim budget as outsourcing video production goes. So let's do it. Well, Bobby, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, John.
Super great to have you. So tell me something that you've been nerding out about lately, work related or not.
Decidedly not work related. So I think I'm a big professional tennis fan. So ATP, WTA tennis, and summer is the great season for those of us that's true for, that you have the French Open at the beginning of the summer, Wimbledon that kind of encapsulates 4th of July, midsummer. And I just caught up in over the last week. Netflix has a documentary that had clearly been many years in the making about Rafael Nadal, with kind of a shocking amount of access following really his final year on the tour, which, if you're familiar with tennis, for one of the most legendary players of all time, was a particularly unsuccessful year due to injury and other kinds of stuff. And I am not typically a sports documentary person, but found this incredibly moving, incredibly well done, full of all of those weird little quirky moments that you hope these subjects will let you see and usually don't. Highlight for me, absolutely, is watching this legendary athlete sing along to Lady Gaga while he's getting his post-match massage. I've been watching this man play tennis since I was in high school, and in no world did I envision that as an experience that we'd have with him. So that has been a fun, post-Wimbledon, post-World Cup come down, was to get to still spend some time in that space. Highly recommend the documentary. It's called Rafa, available on Netflix if you're so inclined. Yeah.
Okay, great. Because I watched a different tennis documentary and I can't remember what it was. I feel like it followed around, it was several years ago, it followed around a few different players, including one of the main characters was that guy that I can't remember his name that gets really mad and he's throws big fits. Maybe that's multiple players, but
there are probably a few, but I think I know what you're talking about. I think you're talking about Daniil Medvedev, a Russian player, but if not,
could be,
fits the bill.
Yeah. So we go up to Northern Michigan every 4th of July, and my stepmom is very into tennis. So Wimbledon is always on the TV on the main floor there. And she gets very protective over the tennis watching space. My kids will come in and be like, can we watch Paw Patrol or something like that? And she's like, no, go downstairs. Watch whatever you want downstairs. We're watching tennis up here.
We go to Michigan every summer ourselves, usually the French Open week. So you are describing me during the French Open week in what the morning viewing has to be, thanks to that time change.
Cool. Well, great. Awesome. So give us a quick lay of the land. What's your role at Sewanee? Who's on your team? What does your content operation actually look like day to day?
Totally. So I am I guess technically a communication and content strategist in the marketing and communications office at Sewanee. And so really that, and I'm sure this will resonate with a lot of people who have similar job titles. I'm going to describe it as an organized chaos, that the day to day is chasing down a number of different things, but kind of starting organizationally, we're not a huge office because we're not a huge school. We have our VP of marketing and communications who is steering the ship, and then kind of a flat organization beyond that, with everybody, as you'll hear, because I think it's kind of fun to talk through, having their title and then the implied title that goes along with everything. So we have a director of design who does all of the graphic design work, both for print pieces and for quite a bit of our video type content. We have our director of publications who edits an astonishing amount of publications and everything that comes out, but also provides the editorial direction for our social media platforms. And in addition to that, because we don't have a staff photographer, he is our photographer for campus-based type things. We have our webmaster, since we're all sort of also maintaining the university website and a number of web pages. But his also is that when we are not working with outside videographers, he is our videographer. So he will operate the camera and often do the editing on the in-house stuff that we do, which is not traditional for your webmaster, but is how we operate. And then we have myself and my colleague Peter Phillips, who are at the communications and content strategist level. And so we are kind of splitting roughly responsibilities kind of by topic, but also a little bit by format. So I tend to do a lot of the writing for the university, but also our longer form and higher production video. Peter works in more so the TikTok, Instagram, Reel, social media space, and working with students on user-generated content. But we cross-pollinate all the time and do so a little bit as well with our connection to the rest of the university. So we sometimes kind of operate in a little bit of an agency model where we have some verticals with the parts or the constituent departments of the university that we support. So I provide communication support to most of the student success functions at the university. Peter does so for admissions, and we both kind of contribute to advancement and development in that kind of area. When it comes to the student success part, the other half of my job is providing support to their needs, but also pulling stories and story subjects kind of back for us to be able to feed the content needs for social media, for admissions pieces, for everything else that's going on. So we start the year this time each summer planning out kind of what big projects we want to budget for, and we work towards those, while then also being responsive to all the weird, unpredictable stuff that is worth shouting about and chasing it down and getting out there to be able to highlight. So I'm certain I've gone into more detail than you were expecting, but that's the lay of the land as it is. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I feel like a bad hire in higher ed is someone that's very niche in their talents. Like having range is, there's this debate of like, is it better to be specialized in something or to have a broad set of expertise? And I'm very much like, I wear a lot of hats and I have to know how to do a lot of stuff. And that's what I'm comfortable with. I mean, it seems like you guys have that going on too, where it's maybe for better or for worse, where you guys have a lot of range.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny that you say the thing about wearing a lot of hats, because that is the time-worn cliche about the small college or the liberal arts college, that everybody is doing a bunch of different things. But I think it is exciting. It just means that your fingers are in a lot of pies. I came to this field through the student affairs side of higher ed. So my background's not in marketing or journalism, but my background is very much in Sewanee. And so I take in that, and that has fed a lot of how I talk to students, how I talk to faculty, pre-existing relationships and whatnot that you bring into the work. So I am learning, and as we talk about this project, you'll see the ways I learned like how to make a video while doing it. I'm learning the technical bits on all of that. But I do know this school, and I know students and I know that stuff really well. So all of our different hats, some hats are more comfortable than others, to continue the metaphor, but they all have a connection point somewhere in there.
Yeah. Well, you've done a good job managing a cool video project, and that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about the Inquiring Minds series. So, in case someone's just listening to this and maybe hasn't watched any of the examples or that we'll put in the description of, a few of these pieces, describe what this series is in audio terms for people.
Totally, totally. Because I'm excited about it and glad that you were excited about it. So, this was a video series that we put together to spotlight a selection of university faculty, kind of very much in their zone, if you will. And so, the idea was to sit down with, ultimately, I think we produce 10 of these episodes, but with one faculty member per episode, more or less have a conversation that starts from a similar point to how you and I started talking today. We didn't literally ask, what are you nerding out about? But we wanted to know, what are they passionate about? What has captured their interest? What are the kinds of things that they could talk about for hours if we would let them, and turn a camera on for it to be able to showcase our faculty doing what is, one of among their many functions at a liberal arts college. At the core is teaching, is educating, is inspiring others. And we wanted to be able to capture that and share that more broadly and give a sense of who you learn from here and what that feels like. And so through the series, each episode focuses on one professor who we gave quite a bit of leeway to take us on a journey where they wanted. And over the course of 4 minutes, they kind of bring us through that topic in a very personality forward way, bring up some questions for thought, and just kind of leave you hopefully wanting to know a little bit more about what has, in an academic sense, like activated them and turned them on so much. That's, I think, the nutshell is how I'd put it.
Yeah. And so you have kind of a consistent set every time, a professor looking directly into camera and just delivering this content. And you have a lot of interesting topics. I'm on the playlist here, and you've got one that's seeing ourselves in the ancient world. And then you got one that's how a diva made history, or what does a lighting designer do, or why amphibians are superheroes. Just related topics, but also kind of like off the beaten path. And these aren't like, here's why you should join this school and take my class, like, which nothing wrong with that. But I feel like this is a great complement to, also having something that explains the program, but like, it's more like, who is this person that you're going to learn from, and, what makes them tick. And that's what I really responded to about that. So how did this idea come about?
Sure. So there are 2 main threads that really led us this way. The first of which was a concerted desire on our end to work more with faculty, to partner more, engage more with faculty, particularly in our video content, and relatedly be able to do more in the academic space or academic storytelling space. That this was a priority for the institution, a priority for us. And so we knew going into the year that we produced this, that was top of mind for what can we do with our professors and how can we get them out there, fed by a lot of things, right? Fed by internal desire, both with us and with our colleagues to see more of that. We'd both I and Parker Oliver, our VP, spend, among our many follows on LinkedIn is Matt Hames at 3E, who has been very vocal about how important faculty are in serving as evangelists for your institution and representatives of it. And so that was very much stuck in our mind. But the second piece that led us to walk up to this idea, this is where you make your cameo, John, is that
all right, here I
in
come.
the summer beforehand with Sewanee, we had engaged with John for a video strategy session over the summer as we were setting up our thoughts, ideas, and priorities for the year. And one of the opportunities that you had identified for us was in the kind of top of the funnel space. And so thinking broadly, topical education, types of content that we weren't already producing, hadn't historically produced, and would be the kind of thing that would provide some kind of complement or boost to where we already were. And so we got into the fall and we're continuing to fill up our roster, our schedule for the year. And at some point, those 2 threads became intertwined. It was, well, no, we can kind of get the proverbial 2 birds with 1 stone by combining all of this, that this is the natural opportunity to bring faculty in. And then from a format standpoint, that came out of creative discussions with Stephen Garrett, who is the videographer that we worked with on this project. And that's where we realized, okay, well, we know we want to get faculty talking, we want to be personality forward. And so it was Stephen who said, okay, I know exactly that we've got to go straight to camera, rather than the kind of more traditional documentary style, to be really engaging and talking right to the audience. And so those pieces came after we decided for sure we're going to move forward with it. It's as casual as that. One day we said, we've got to make a choice. And then by the end of the day, it was, this is the choice that makes the most sense.
Cool. Yeah, I loved seeing that pop up in my LinkedIn feed because we had done the strategy work and we had kind of laid out a whole kind of distribution plan, and here's kind of what you guys are doing well, and here's what we can add, more of into your content ecosystem. And then I didn't hear anything for a while, and then all of a sudden this Inquiring Minds thing popped up, and I'm like, oh, they did it. Yes. Like someone took the advice and actually like ran with it, because sometimes you do strategy work and then you deliver a PDF and it sits in a folder somewhere, and and everyone says, okay, that was great, it was business as usual. But it was so refreshing to see you guys do something and then have it really come alive. Like, it was cool. And I've actually gotten to know Steven through that. So Steven was your videographer. He's a Sewanee alum, lives in Chicago now. So yeah, I've gotten to know Steven. He's shot and produced some stuff for me in our Chicago-based work. Yeah, does great work. Perfect fit for something like this. So on that note, how did the execution play out? So you mentioned, building the plane while flying it. Once you decided what to do, what were the next steps? Because particularly I'm wondering, faculty are notoriously hard to wrangle. So how did you get lots of them to do this and do it in a way that doesn't look like I've got 10 minutes? What am I talking about here?
No, it's a good question, and I'm happy to run with that. And throughout, you'll hear me continue to sing Steven's praises throughout everything, because he was obviously great to work with, and we continue to partner with him frequently. But really, the reason that I described the experience of doing this as like building the plane while flying it is this is the first video project at this level that I ever worked on in my career. I've mentioned before, this is my second career. So this was the project on which I learned all of the ins and outs, or many of the ins and outs of what it takes to pull stuff off. And so all of it was a constant discovery for me, but we put it together in a really tight timeline to be able to make it work. And so this was a project idea that we committed to, I think, on the Monday before Thanksgiving. And then we were, up against all of the college calendar to be able to secure participants and get things in line before we broke for the winter break. And then we were filming in the first week of January when we were back. And so it was quite a compressed pre-production timeline. But we had to start with, who are we going to talk to, right? You ask about faculty, like that was the first pressing question among many. And we were not anticipating that it would be as easy to secure participants as it ended up being. So I think there are a few things that feed that, but we relied really strongly on the relationship that we built with the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences and the Associate Dean, and our partnership with our colleagues over there, in that right when we got back from Thanksgiving, we, along with kind of the Dean of Admission and some of our staff over here, had a big brainstorming session of who are everybody that we want to start with? Like, who do we want to approach? Like, what is out there? We knew that it was important to us that the faculty who we included be representative of the kind of broad variety, both of disciplines in what everyone is teaching, that we didn't want to do 10 math professors or 10 English professors, but move across the institution that way. We wanted a diversity of experience level. So we wanted to include pre-tenure and tenured and extremely senior faculty as well. And we also, wanted to make sure that this group of faculty who we put forward feels reasonably representative of who our faculty population is overall. And so we started with a list. We kind of prioritized down to hit all of those markers and what we thought. And really, we did have the dean of the college make the first ask. And so we provided her with kind of details. She had her sign off on the project and was able to frame it in the way of, this is obviously not a job requirement for you, but is something that is great for the school, great for the college, is something that I hope you'll really strongly consider. And everybody said yes, with three exceptions. And those were three faculty members who were on book tours and things that made it impossible, and not because of an aversion to the project. But I think that the other piece that has quite a bit to helping us, or went a long way towards getting us that yes, is the nature of the ask. That not just who was doing it, but what we were asking for is not the ask that faculty were necessarily used to getting, right? That tell us, what do you want to talk about? That's going to be our starting question, not framing or putting things forward of, we'd like to invite you to come in and give the scripted pitch that will tell you what to say, right? It's a very different kind of approach. I had been concerned that what that was going to hit the faculty as was, oh, you want me to draw up a whole lecture or a whole new conference present, all of these things that it takes
Yeah.
is like, actually, that's not what we want to do. This is the clarification that we can give, and we put that out there. And so we very quickly were able to get to our list. And in the remaining time that we had, and a little bit over the winter break, is where I did the pre-production work with our faculty on massaging and refining the topics so that they knew how to come prepared for our interviews, and that we had some expectation on our end of what it was when we turned on the camera that we would be talking about. We did not have time for traditional pre-interviews. And my first takeaway when we finished the project was how very much I wish that I had had 30 minutes with everybody to not do a dry run, but to really get into it. Because what I was doing, it was kind of there's a huge variety of ways that ideas and topics were communicated to me through faculty, but we were able to go back and forth, and I could hop on the phone with a few people to help jump into it. But mostly we wanted to know what realm we were in so we could do a little bit of research and come with questions, but keep it very conversational as our style, with Stephen and I knowing that we would be jumping in with questions of, follow-up questions, and keeping it moving and not trying to go through a presentation that you would give in class, and be able to draw the personality out that way. So then at the same time, we had to also go through the journey that we go on every time we do a video shoot on campus, and find space that will work and lock down the logistics for the shoot. And so it was important, knowing that we were going to kind of do this straight to camera setup, that we needed to make our videographer happy, a space with a lot of depth and a lot of height to it. So we wanted high ceilings. We wanted a very deep room in order to, I guess, provide. And I'm sure you, John, can speak more to the technical aspect of that. But I know to be able to,
I could do a whole episode on why you want a big room, a big open room. Don't stuff your videographer in a little conference room if you can help it. Anyways.
Oh, yes. No, and I've seen that in your newsletter, and it's like, it just kept ticking the box. Like, yep, that's exactly what I heard from Stephen. And also trying to look for a space where we would have as much control as possible over light and sound. But we also knew that in order to be effective and to shoot as many of these interviews in just 3 days as we could, that we wanted to do one setup. So we wanted to be set in one location, have that for the duration of the shoot, and not be dealing with the additional time constraints of taking things down at the end of the day, moving to a new location. That we wanted to be able to have it. And so it helped that we were a little bit on a school break, that we were shooting before classes started, but we also were able to just luck into an ignored space on campus that, believe it or not, the lower level of campus ballroom that had been kind of a secondary ballroom space for a little while, and in the age of COVID had been converted to a makeshift socially distanced lecture hall. And what it gave us was the leftover, we had the furniture in the space that could connote academia, while still having some architectural features and depth needed to be able to make an interesting shot. The downside, the one significant hurdle of that space, was that one wall was entirely windows. And so we did need to work with our facilities department to get curtains in place to give us a little bit more control. The fun anecdote there is that the curtains did show up the morning of the shoot, which is when we needed them. We did not know they were going to be purple. We thought we'd got black curtains, but they were purple. So if you go and actually watch through the series, there are a few who we shot in the late afternoon that have like a lovely amber violet glow happening in the back, which is purely because of the purple curtains that we unintentionally incorporated into everything.
I'm trying to find one of those on the playlist here.
Yeah, I think the reading fiction in unprecedented times, the Brit Threat one, I know we shot her at the very end of the day, and that was our first day. So after it finished, Stephen was like, yeah, so this is what those curtains are doing. We're going to roll with it, because they don't have to be exact. We're not cutting them together. Each video is able to kind of do its own thing.
Yeah, that's great. And one thing, because I know you guys did this on a very tight budget as well. Are you comfortable talking about the budget? Because it was remarkable what you were able to do with little resources.
Yeah, of course. And really, I think all final budgeting ends up being slightly creative in the accounting is the proviso that I will put out there, because we went into this project, I should say, with it as an unbudgeted project. And it was something that we added and had not formally committed to on the front end. And so we were finding money to be able to pull it together. And that just is what led to our intense need to be really tight with the purse strings and very specific with the actual execution of it. Ultimately, in the final accounting, for these 10 videos, I would put where we spent in the like 1250 to 1500 per video range, which again, I'm learning this, or I was learning this field as we got into it. And one of the things that was told to me is that you can think of a rule of thumb that for really high quality video, you're probably spending at least $1,000 per minute of screen time. And these are 4 to 5 minute videos. And that was the entirety of what we spent. But that came down to a ton of production decisions meant to streamline and spread the costs across everything. And so part of what made this an unbudgeted shoot was that we were taking advantage of already bringing Stephen to campus for a different project and just extending his stay. So we were able to cover travel costs and incorporate them that way, while also sticking to the single location. And Stephen was our only crew member. So Stephen ran 2 cameras and sound, and I was there with him, to do the interviews and track story, and was of limited assistance to set up lights and whatnot.
Yeah.
I was booted at that point in time. Broken foot. Sorry, I couldn't do that kind of stuff. So that was our ragtag team that made this happen. And then Stephen was our lone editor after the fact. And we did work with an animator, Lee Burmesh, who is wonderful. And I hope in the show notes or something we can, when we link to these videos, you'll see her work, but can link to that as well. But knowing that to stretch our dollar, our shoot was essentially what we could do was the interviews, right? So we did not have B-roll days or kind of additional shoot days built in. And so we needed to take advantage of subscriptions to Storyblocks and Pond5 and those sorts of things to be able to, again, at like per video costs of $20 or $30, that would help provide imagery, but also sound effects and music that would be able to pull this all together without having to go super far on a per video basis, and be able to take what we had left in the budget to be able to work with kind of buying a block of our animator Lee's time and to distribute her work across the series. So she kind of knew how much she would be able to work with us, but what it gave us the flexibility to identify some videos that really didn't need anything beyond the title screen, and others that needed quite a bit more to be able to go into it. And that, I think, raised what is the perceived production value, of these videos, to have that really high quality animation happening in it. But treating it as the block of 10 made that effective that way, I think.
Yeah, from a budget perspective, that's one thing I noticed. It's like, for people listening, the big ways that colleges spend more money on a video is having unique locations for every person. So you're having to take the time to, when we roll up with gear and we got to unpack everything, at least an hour and a half to set everything up, light the interview, get everything ready. And then when you tear that down and you move somewhere else, now you got to spend that time again. So yeah, I mean, keeping everyone in one spot, same frame, you have kind of a series that's just working for you. You're just saying, we're going to live in this environment visually. And from the videos that I've seen, not following them around, trying to film like this narrative B-roll, not trying to fake them working at their desk or anything like that, but just leaning into like, the interview is what you get. Here's some extra visuals too, to kind of make this come alive. But like the main event is the interview, and it's just the thoughts coming out on camera. I think we overcomplicate video too much, to where we try to make it too much about making this like cinematic documentary, these moments. And then they end up like, when I watch people's videos, sometimes I'm just like, I know that you faked that and it feels really fake. So sometimes it's refreshing to just like, I just want to listen to an interesting person talk. I don't need you to dress this up with, them typing at their computer or, pointing at a whiteboard or anything. So yeah. And you were able to save quite a bit of money by doing that. Cause yeah, when you keep everyone in one location, you keep one setup and you just cycle people through. Personally, that's my favorite, because now we can just focus on the content and the conversation, having a natural conversation. We're not, every time you move the gear, now you have new production problems that sometimes you don't realize till you're a third of the way into the conversation. And you're like, oh shoot, the sun's coming in this window now. And I'm like distracted trying to interview this person and also worrying about how's my editor going to fix that, So anyway, you guys did a lot of things right in saving money, but also having that be like an asset to, like, it works, it doesn't feel like a compromise.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. And honestly, it also, I think I'm just reiterating what you said too, but it lends the series and it lends us focus, and it lets the right parts shine. And so
Yeah.
I'm glad that you picked up on that.
Have you ever wondered what a video producer does? Like, what the heck is a producer? Let me frame it like this. Has your team ever hired a video company, paid a bunch of money, and then somehow you ended up doing all the scheduling and the coordinating and chasing people down to make the shoot happen? At Unveiled, we hate that for you because that's not your job. That's the producer's job. A producer steers the ship. They handle the logistics, all the planning, the moving pieces, all the details, so you can focus on the message and managing your stakeholders. When you work with us on a video storytelling subscription, you're assigned a dedicated producer whose role is to take as much of that grunt work off your plate as possible while delivering a ton of videos all year long, primed for distribution across awareness, consideration, and yield. Take the next step at unveiled.tv and book a call with me. I'd love to hear what you're working on. Okay, back to the show. Well, let's unpack a couple of these specific examples. So, walk us through a couple, what they're talking about and kind of what, the value to the viewer might be from something like that.
Totally. So one of the first ones that I wanted to talk about is called How a Diva Made History. And I know you've read that title on this episode already.
Yep.
But that's Professor Cecilia Serja, who is a professor here that teaches in both politics and women's and gender studies. And the topic of her video was Josephine Baker, who was in kind of early 1900s, pre-World War II, but extending up to the 1960s. She was a vaudeville dancer, a civil rights leader in America, but also abroad. And I think perhaps most interestingly, an Allied spy during World War II. And so just an incredibly dynamic figure from all of those different angles. And this video topic, Cecilia is not a Josephine Baker scholar per se, but she does study pop culture. She studies figures, and particularly women political figures and entertainers who are also activists. And so this came out of kind of one section of a course on historical divas that she teaches, in addition to Beyonce and kind of others that form the basis of that. And I think it really,
Cool.
From a topical standpoint, is such a great display of like what kind of one time, with one unit with this professor, what it might look like, but also can be a little bit of shaking up, if they're existing, any stuffy ideas about what a traditional liberal arts college, study looks and feels like. That this is really relevant and really kind of exciting and dynamic ways of talking about these kinds of topics. What I love about this video is that this was one that we put quite a bit of our animator Lee's time on, because we're talking about a historical figure for whom a lot of the most interesting aspects of her life are not recorded on camera or on video, and left us with some kind of quandaries about how do we, because we're talking about a specific famous person, how can we visualize this? And we had some ideas of maps and kind of certain photos that we could animate. And the beauty of working with a really great animator is that they bring their ideas and their boost to lift that up. And so it was Lee's idea to sort of be able to show through animation one of the ways that Josephine Baker served as a spy for the Allies during World War II, is that she could, as an entertainer, she was expected to cross borders, that she needed to move between countries to be able to go to all of her spots. And as an entertainer, one of the things she would need to bring with her was her sheet music. And so the wartime secrets were written on that sheet music in invisible ink, and therefore could be smuggled across the border. And clearly, like, to maintain secrecy, that was never photographed or videoed, but Lee's animation was able to show that in progress and give us another way of just expanding kind of the visual language of that story. And I think that the animation there really underlines, like, it adds movement to the video, but I think it also helps reflect Cecilia's personality and how you think, okay, we're talking about history. Cecilia could not be a more bubbly and kind of captivating speaker. And I think having really kind of fun, kind of cardboard cutout style animations, moving that forward, just continues to hammer the tone home. And so that's one where I'm like, if you're going to start anywhere, start there. I think it's such a nice example of what we're doing in the series.
Yeah, I love that. So that stuff, that's fascinating to me. And as if I were going to be a grad student, you want to know what the program is, and is this a program that makes sense for you? But then when you want to go deeper, you want to know, like, who is this professor and like, what could I learn? And the fact that, you can watch a video for free on YouTube and learn something profound, I really think that says a lot about the academic experience that we don't lean into enough. And I know Matt Hames, you mentioned, harps on this a lot, and him and I vibe a lot about YouTube optimization too. I have an episode earlier with Matt all about YouTube. So yeah, he harps on a lot of things. But yeah, one of them is faculty participation. I think this is what makes it great, is just interesting. And, it's not necessarily something that's going to go viral to the general public, but for somebody that's interested in Sewanee and interested in what that professor teaches, I think it's just a great way to show, not just tell, what the academic experience is about.
Totally, totally. And I think we were hoping that one of the ways it would also allow us to do something a little different is I think it's very natural, and I think there's a lot of value in, we think of faculty and jump frequently right to tell us about your research, or let's show you doing your research, or report out on the research that's happening. And I think that that's a really vital part of university life. But particularly at our institution, our faculty are teachers, and they want to be teachers. They want to be educating. They're engaged with students in all of these ways. And sometimes it can be hard to figure out how are we going to show that or invite people into that. And so this was an effort to be able to showcase that aspect of the many roles that they are, in addition to advisors and researchers and leading academics. And again, our premium was on personality and letting these people be themselves, because they are, if you come here, small college, you're going to know your faculty deeply and many times over the years. And so they are humans. And so we want to present them as humans.
Yeah, that's great. The one that I saw initially was the mathematics of aviation. And that was like, I was like gripped by that, because it was like, it felt suspenseful. She's talking about flying, and I mean, it was a year or so ago that I watched this. I can't immediately remember what it was about, but I remember it being about, we're seeing plane footage in the air, and she's talking about mathematics and like what happens when, how do you get a plane to stay in the air or something like that. Tell me about that one.
Absolutely. So the mathematics of aviation, our faculty speaker on that one is Catherine Cavagnaro, who is the chair of mathematics and computer science, but is also a pilot and an aviator herself, and a really highly regarded one. And so one of the things that we shamefully in our research were not aware of before we sat down with her was that for a period of time, she was a world record holder for, in a small plane, like free spins going, like, AKA, and she described it, you go up as high as you can, point your plane back down at the earth, and just spin as many times as you can before you kick the engine back on and don't crash.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
The suspenseful part. I remember it was something about a plane crash, but I didn't want to.
Yes. Yeah. But so
about that.
It is a trick thing. And she was the world record holder for quite a number of years, because she is a bit of a daredevil. But that was something that once she said, and we dug a little bit more into on camera, immediately stood out as, oh, that's our intro to the video. That you can't hear her tell you that and not want to find out more about what she has to say. But her kind of whole story is, these are her two biggest passions, that she's been passionate about math and studying math for forever, came to Sewanee, where we do have an airport on campus, and she runs the kind of student pilot program here. Catherine learned to fly here and has continued to then combine those different pieces, her mathematical self, as she puts it, with her pilot self. And she is well regarded in the aviation community, and so her video has had traction beyond Sewanee because of that. If you get a pilot's license in Tennessee, there's a good chance that Catherine is the person who tests you. I have found Reddit threads of people sharing gossip about, oh, I've got my test with Cavagnaro, is she tough, what's going on. So she's out there, and she writes a monthly column for a pilot's magazine. And one of the things that kind of led her to say, this is what I want to talk about, is that she would hear from pilots who go through their specific training and understand how their planes work, but aren't required to know the math behind it. And Catherine's thing is that knowing the theory, but also the math for why the balance point of a plane needs to be where it is, why speed matters so much when you're making a turn, because if you're going faster, you need more space to make a turn. So you have to adjust your speed to avoid crashes and those kinds of things. That she felt like pilots were telling her, knowing that and knowing the math underpinning it absolutely makes me a better pilot, a safer pilot, and whatnot. So Catherine really did sit down wanting to talk about her journey at Sewanee, and specifically about where she sees flying and the liberal arts connecting. And that was parts of our very lengthy conversation that we were more so able to capture in the article that accompanies the video because, and this is what I love about mathematicians, that we're sitting there and we're having the conversation and we're talking about all these aspects of flying, that we were able to ask about the mathematical concepts and she could, without pulling out a textbook, name the equations, talk us through them, give us all those pieces that help make a dynamic and interesting visual, that we can have her talking through gravity and forces and turn radius, knowing that we're going to be able to illustrate that and have her voice give the practical what it means. And then it was Stephen's wonderful call as inspiration visually for that to pull out 1940s and 50s pilots manuals, so like what the Army was using back then, to give us the font style and imagery style for Lee to then animate as we brought that stuff to life. So we got to have some fun in how we presented it also.
That's great. I love it. And you mentioned a print article that went with each of these. So talk me through your distribution strategy. How did this get rolled out?
Absolutely. So we started on social media, knowing, because we were building the plane as we were flying it, that we were going to build out the rest of the distribution as we did it, but knowing we wanted to use these in as many places and in as many ways as possible. So we started by releasing the full videos on social media, including with links back to the kind of web architecture that we built around the series. And so each video on our website, they live together as a collection and each have a subpage that includes more opportunities for engagement or more opportunities to explore across the greater Sewanee.edu web presence. But that included a written article because these are 4-minute videos. I think our shortest interview with a faculty member was like 45 minutes. So we had really, really scintillating conversations and more areas for inquiry than we could put reasonably in one video. And so this was a way to capture some other pieces of that while also being able to create links or other ways of engaging with the topic that moved out of that, right? So one video that we haven't talked about is an English professor who was very passionate about young adult genre fiction and the ways that that genre is ripe for analysis and absolutely as worth diving into as your more, let's say, highbrow literary fiction. But what came out of that video was also a recommended reading list. And so we were able in her website to capture her book recommendations with more of her context setting for each one and give kind of other ways to engage with the topic that way. But coming back to the question that you really asked, which is distribution, how do we get these out there? So we started with the full-length social media rollouts on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. We also produced cut downs for TikTok that we have circulated and will probably circulate again. All of these videos, and we released them roughly at a cadence of about one every other week over the course of several months, which allowed us to kind of keep the content mill churning, from our one shoot. But the university every month has a monthly e-newsletter that goes to all students, faculty, and staff, but also all parents, all alumni, and all kind of friends of Sewanee, if you want to call it that way, which is a 45,000 plus distribution list. And so these were featured content pieces in those newsletters at that cadence to keep going along. And then we're kind of still working through, because we're doing more work on the website, in particular our institutional website when it comes to departmental and program pages. But the idea is that these will be incorporated into faculty bio pages and onto the departmental landing pages as well. The kind of final use that we've continued, I guess there's two more really. These have been incorporated into summer anti-melt campaigns through admissions. Nice. So we have more ways of keeping people entertained, informed, and keeping the fires of their excitement to attend here fed. And then these videos, this was not part of the plan at all, but the university recently did roll out a newly rehauled or retooled first year experience for incoming new students that includes a 1-credit weekly course that all first years take that is not Sewanee 101, but is very much of that ilk as other institutions have, which includes exploration and thinking about future paths, both for academic study and career. And this video series has been incorporated into the syllabus for that class to help carry out all the different ways that you can pursue these questions, whether or not you are a bio major. You still have a way into all this other kind of stuff. So that's the discoveries we made about just how to get these out there. We just feel really good about them. And so the underlying idea was we put all of this time and effort and resources into creating something, and your words echo a lot in my head of like, what a shame if it's used one time in one way and forgotten about. Like, this is good content. It should still be out there or be put out there.
Yeah, I had previous guests on my podcast, Ross, that was, we talked about Reddit when he was on. He posted on LinkedIn the other day, and he said, content marketing is a 2-word description. He's like, you make the content, but you also have to market the content. And he was talking about how, like, how so many people make a piece of content and it just dies there. They made it, they move on to the next thing. And I just thought that was an interesting way to put it. Yeah, so we talk about content marketing, but really too often teams are focused on the content because that's the thing that's like yelling really loud. We got to get this done, and then we got to post it, and then it's like, okay, we did it. Now on to the onto the next thing. But I'd love to see that you guys are finding new ways to integrate this content in your existing, workflows and various touch points with students, because I think we underestimate how many touch points there are, possible uses for our marketing content. I love that you're integrating it into like classwork, because it's like, what a way to just get more use out of the thing that you already made from the, these professors, and giving them a video, videos to watch that are actually engaging. These aren't like, 1980s, infomercial style, like corporate training videos or something like that. These are modern, engaging, learning pieces. So yeah, I love to see that. And as you've been distributing these, the question that people always want to know is, what is the return on investment for something like this? There are so many different ways to measure effectiveness. I think we often go straight to, okay, well, how many views did it get? But what are you guys seeing kind of anecdotally or measurability?
Yeah, and I knew the question would be coming. And again, this is me singing your praises back at you. But one of the things that I think you have been clear about is that, I'm paraphrasing, but not all views are created equal, right? And that like a raw viewership number can only say or mean so much, because so much matters about who is seeing it, what their engagement or interaction is. I think that, not that I'm an expert in stepping maybe slightly out of my lane, it's really tempting, or I really want to be able to point to an individual video or a video series and attribute X number of applications, start at the top of the funnel, go all the way down and say,
yes,
and this was the thing that did it. And I know that that's really an impossibility. And so it's more, we have to have a couple different measures or things that mean success about this for us. I think we consider it a successful return on investment, on like the quality level. And I think that is, I really don't want to feel like I'm tooting my own horn like gratuitously when I say that, but we're proud, and that the reaction from the kind of direct feedback that we've gotten from the fact that, frankly, that you noticed it and liked it, that we're aware because we've heard from provosts and senior leaders at our peer institutions who have made it known that, I want my school to do this, like, good job. All of those things point to evidence that we were onto something here, and that the idea that we had was something that we were able to execute because other people got it, right? The fact that I would aim higher than 0. I look at the viewing numbers, and really for the way that we traffic these, that I think the irony is that like the YouTube view count is the lowest because we actually actively send people to YouTube less than we do to Vimeo or social media or kind of other ways. So I don't get hung up on it, but it has been watched. And the fact that every time we do share it through a newsletter, or we have these moments that goes up, right? I'm like, okay, people are clicking. There are successful pieces there. I think the bigger success, not bigger, but a notable success as I look at the effort, was that this was the first, or maybe the second step in walking towards our goal of greater engagement with faculty, greater incorporation of faculty, spending more time in the academic space. And so it was, in a lot of ways, a proof of concept that we turned out to not have the difficulty in securing faculty participation that I thought we might, but we also now have, for all of our future projects, something really real and concrete to point back to of what it means when we're inviting our colleagues in, and when we say, we want to talk to you, we want to showcase your work, that we have something really high quality, really approachable, and really respectful of the work that they do, that then provides a trampoline for even more participation. I mean, I think we're hoping to revisit this series and extend it in the coming coming year. And I can only imagine that we'll have an even easier time and have more possibilities to be able to do that. But I don't want to underplay the success factor of trying something new, of selling a bill of goods, to all the people that have to underwrite it, and being able to deliver, or in some ways over deliver on it, and say, we set out to do something and we did. And so that is a piece that was us going out on a limb a little bit, even just at the top of the funnel. We weren't doing it, but now we are, and we're doing it because we had to start and build the momentum somewhere. And so I think that's like built into how you evaluate whether something is worth doing.
Yeah. I know it's something you said earlier about, feeling you don't want to be, like you're bragging or something like that, but you're proud of these videos. And I think that is a very valid, measurable, like a thing to measure. Is the team proud of the production level? Does this represent the university well? Because if you're not proud of it, you're going to be embarrassed on some level. You're not going to share it. No one else is going to share it. You're more likely to keep it hidden. There are podcast episodes that I do that I don't promote as much as other ones, because I feel like, it didn't go as well as I wanted to. And usually those are the solo episodes where it's just me blabbering into the mic and I don't feel like I articulated my thoughts very well. But one thing I've learned as a videographer and, doing a lot of client work and proposals and things like that, and discovery work, is whenever I ask, potential partner, how are they going to measure this video? 9 times out of 10, they don't have an answer that they've actually thought about. Like, they don't have we want to get X number of applications from this video. Really, wading through all the various responses that we get to that question, it really, I think, comes down to, we want a tool that we're proud of. So for me, I'm kind of like, I've had to make peace with the fact that, like, I may never get these like case studies where it's like, oh, we made this video for this school and they increased enrollment by 2,000% or something like that. I'm never going to get one of those, because really I'm in the business of making videos that are tools that people are proud of. And I think if you're going to be a construction worker, or you're going to do something where you need a lot of tools, like, you want tools that you're proud of. That in itself is like the first step. Like I said, I find it hilarious, all the TikToks I get about like Ryobi users. Ryobi is like, they make like consumer power tools versus like, so you have the people in the trades that are like, someone does something dumb and they're like, he probably is a Ryobi user. So there is something to be said about like the pride of the tools that you have, and what that says about you, what that says about the university's identity. And then when people feel that positively represents their identity, they're likely to spread that content further. So I think we should just come out and say it, that, like all the beating around the bush that we do about, ROI, we should just say, I want something that I'm proud of. And if we've accomplished that, we've accomplished the goal. So now we have a tool that we can take places and be proud of what we're presenting. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that there's just something that comes up for me a lot. And I think it's something that we should embrace.
I'm right there with you. I appreciate the validation.
Yeah. So speaking of the quality of these, you guys were nominated for a pretty significant award. So tell me about that.
We did. We were recognized in the Education in Schools category at the Regional Emmy Awards for the Mid-South region, which, it was I actually didn't know that award existed. So this is why you combine with professionals. Thank you, Stephen Garrett. But Stephen's, and this is, again, kind of feeding into that idea of being proud. Like, it meant something to me how much Stephen, who has been doing this for way longer than I have, and on many other more projects than I had, certainly at that point in time, for him to look at it and say, no, we really have something here, and this is worth sharing. And frankly, part of the impetus for submitting it for consideration was another way of putting the university's name out there, of having more people see kind of what we're doing or what we're trying now. And we were lucky enough for it to result in a nomination, and like a very interesting evening for me spent at a formal award ceremony for an industry that I was very newly a part of. That was very fun, and totally worth the experience. The way I can best encapsulate it is that it felt very much like going to a wedding where you don't know the bride or the groom and everyone else knows each other. You're in a tux and just kind of figuring it out. But it felt kind of wonderful to have those who have no specific connection to the university or even necessarily a specific connection to higher ed be able to recognize the quality of the production and the storytelling, which is what makes that series successful. So thanks
Yeah.
for letting me brag about that part of it too.
Absolutely. And it's something to be proud of because, there is an award mill kind of industry in the video industry. You have, I won't name any of the specific ones, but you start getting ads for them to submit your work. And this is not one of those. Like, this is one of the actually, like, people in the industry like respect the Emmys, and they have, like, I think the national chapter, and then they have like the regional chapters and stuff like that. I mean, even just to be nominated is a huge honor, and I think it's really says a lot about what you guys are doing and the quality of it, all of it. And I'm just amazed that you did it with such a small budget. So I'm so impressed.
Yeah.
So it can be done. Don't
Yeah.
let some vendor tell you have to spend $50,000 to get this done.
Yeah. It requires a ton of like force and determination of will. I'll be upfront about that. And frankly, probably on my end, a little bit of naivete of, I didn't know that if I had more money, we could do it differently, So there's also like developing the habit, but in retrospect can see, yeah. But I'm happy to talk about that aspect of it and glad that you jumped on it. Because I think the point that throwing more money at something is not a guarantee of what's going to come out the other side, and that the core kind of principles and the core idea really do still matter. And it's nice to see that play out.
One of my favorite documentaries was put out by the staff of Wistia. Are you familiar with Wistia?
No.
It's like Vimeo, but it's got like extra bells and whistles. You can put calls to action in the stuff, and it's just a little more robust of a hosting platform. But the team is like, they're great content creators. And years ago, it was probably 10 years ago, they put out this documentary called 110-100. And so they had a new product that they were launching. It's one of the most brilliant product launches that I've ever seen. And it was basically like a predecessor to Loom, like where you can record your screen and kind of give a presentation and send that link to somebody. It was called Soapbox. And so they made a promo 3 different times for Soapbox. One was $1,000 budget, one was $10,000 budget, and the other one was the $100,000 budget. And you could see like the very different in quality from 1,000 to 10,000. But then you see like, honestly, this drop off when you started getting at the $100,000 level, getting the commercial actors in there and a big crew and all the lighting and stuff like that. And the consensus was from the audience, because they did this test, they had them vote, which one do you prefer? And almost everyone unanimously said the 10,000 one, because it was like, it's quality, but it's not too commercial. Because when you start to throw more money at something, now you have all this room to play with to start, like I mentioned, kind of like faking things and like, trying to get extras in the shots and like kind of trying to fake these scenarios. Whereas when you are limited to a certain constraints, then you just got to make it about the content. And I think you guys did a really great job with that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, this has been a great conversation. Been looking forward to this one. So glad it went as well as I hoped. And this will be an episode that I promote heavily. So rest assured.
I appreciate that. That's all I wanted to be for you. Suitably quality guest.
Yeah. So where can people connect with you if they have questions?
Absolutely. I'm reachable by email, rjsilk, SILK at sewanee.edu. I'm also on LinkedIn. Perhaps by the time this goes up, I may bite the bullet and add a photo to my LinkedIn profile so you'll know for sure it's me. But I'm Robert Silk on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect in that way or take anything either way. I don't have a social media presence beyond that though. So that's your limited avenue towards reaching me.
Yeah. Probably best to email you then if you don't check your LinkedIn too much.
I get on there, but I'm currently a blank profile to my great shame. Yeah.
We'll allow it. Well, it's super great conversation. Loved having you on. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks so much, John.
Hey, thanks for listening. I want to give you two things before you go. Number one, reminder to sign up for the Higher Ed Storytellers Digest. It's my free weekly newsletter for Marcom leaders where we talk about all things content creation and strategy in higher ed. Subscribe at unveiled.tv/newsletter. Number two, follow me on LinkedIn. If you're searching for me, my name is John Azzoni, and it's spelled Johnazoni. All right, I'll catch you on the next episode, and in the meantime, I'll see you in your inbox. Okay, bye.